What's up guys, Kyle here again and welcome back to another episode of FAQ'N Friday. It is a disgusting day here in Erie, but I am pumped nonetheless to be here hanging with you guys and answering your questions. Real quick, I just want to reiterate a couple things from last week's episode and keep driving them into your noggin. Bushido Code has a show in New Jersey tomorrow. And a couple of you guys already said that you will be there and I can't wait to hang out, talk about gear, riffs, and bang heads with you. I'm not gonna physically bang my head against your head, it's like bang your heads like, like metalhead stuff, Stuff like that. Sounds like fun, right? So anyways, for everybody who's making it out tomorrow, I can't wait to see you guys and hang out for a little bit. And if you're in the area, it would be great for you guys to come by, check us out, hang out for a little bit. Second thing, my Neural Cortex profile is live. Thrash Damon is my username, and I have a bunch of captures uploaded, and I'm going to be uploading a bunch more of the amps that I'm going to be demoing this week. I also have captures of my Deadweald Duality, of both the blue and green channels, and the MXR M77 Overdrive, all the way that I would set them up so you guys can test them out in front of your captures or amp models in your Neural Quad Cortex. So go ahead and give me a follow on the Neural Cortex app if you want to try out some of my captures and let me know what you guys think. I'd appreciate it. Third item, I started a Discord server. The link is going to be right here, and it's also going to be down in the description of this video and all my other videos moving forward. So far, we've already got a bunch of people in there, and the chat is very active with people talking about gear and all sorts of cool stuff, so it'd be really awesome for you guys to join us over at my Discord server. Link is in the description below. Thank you! All right, so let's finally get to the reason that we are all here. Gear questions. Question number one comes from my man Troy Frink. I've got two questions. Number one, what are the differences between the Lynch Mod and the Hot Mod? And number two, have you ever played an SLO-30? If so, how does it compare to the SLO-100? All right, man. Question number one, the Hot Mod and the Lynch Mod. As far as David has explained it to me, the Hot Mod has the bass switch and the gain switch. The gain switch is a fixed value, of course. With the Lynch Mod, the gain is on a pot, so you can adjust that little pot to fine-tune the amount of gain that you have. The bass switch, I believe that they both operate at the same frequencies. David, if not, I'm sorry. I'm sure you can come in and correct me down in the comments. So really, the only difference is that the gain is a switch on the Hot Mod, whereas it is a adjustable pot on the Lynch Mod. Now, the Evo, the Hot Mod Evo, which is the new production model from David, is now on a high quality PCB, whereas the Lynch Mod was hand wired. That's a difference there. That's really the difference in price, as it takes a lot more time to hand wire the Lynch Mod than it does to just put the PCB inside the housing and everything else, according to David. I don't know. I'm not an electrical guy. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, overall sound-wise, I didn't notice any difference in sound. I like that the Lynch Mod has an adjustable gain pot because it actually allowed me to put it right in a sweet spot on my JMP 2203 to get the gain exactly where I want it, and I'm just gonna leave it there. That's gonna stay in my JMP 2203 forever. Now, unfortunately, David has decided to discontinue the Lynch Mod and move on to other things. So as of now, the Lynch Mod is discontinued. It's essentially a collector's item, so I'm really glad that I have mine. Thanks again, David, for sending that out. You guys will see it in a video here in the very near future. Near future. But either way, they both sound awesome. They're both a great piece of kit if you have an older Marshall that needs a little boost in the juice, or it does work in a couple other amps, but I will leave that for the Legendary Tones site to give you guidance on what amps it works on. That did not feel like a very well-constructed sentence. Part two of your question, Troy. I have not played the SLO-30. I really want to get my hands on one. I actually was originally looking for the SLO-30 before I bought my SLO-100, just because of the price difference, but found the SLO-100 for a good price, and honestly, I'm like, okay, I need to try the real deal. I need to try the big boy. That way, I'm referencing the OG and not the SLO-30 as where the SLO tone is and feel and sound in the room is versus, anything that I'm gonna reference it against. So I will get an SLO-30 on the channel at some time. I am definitely going to be looking for one, so I have not played it yet. I absolutely do plan on playing it and comparing it to the big one to see what the differences are. All right, Jenga981 asks, what are your thoughts on using an attenuator versus lower master volume settings on a tube amp? Thanks, and great channel, man. Thank you very much, dude. I appreciate that. For me, it is all dependent on the amp and the attenuator for that matter, because I have used a couple attenuators. The Rivera Rock Crusher is the one that I had for a while, and that one was pretty good. The attenuator in the 2 notes captor, not as good. It's also a minus 20 dB attenuator, and there's no room in between. So you're taking a lot of volume off with that minus 20 dB. And it seems to color the tone pretty heavily. It kind of rounds things off. It takes a lot of the treble out, and it kind of warms and fattens things up considerably. Now, it worked really well on a 1959 SLP that I had that's extremely bright and extremely loud, but other amps it hasn't worked so well on. The good attenuators, I've not used the aux box or the Waza tube expander or any of the other like good attenuators for that matter, so I'm guessing that they'll do a better job. The captor is only a little $250 piece of equipment. It's really meant to be more of a load box than anything, so it's not really apples to apples in my opinion. The Rock Crusher did a good job, but again, it depends on the amp. If you're playing a older Marshall, especially a 1959 Super Lead, but even so, an old 2203 or 2204 is going to be insanely loud. Even the 900 and the 2000s don't have that great of a master volume on them. So certain amps really do well at low volumes. The EVH 5153 50 watt heads being a perfect example of that. And my Peavey XXX does pretty well at lower volumes as well. So it depends on the amp. But for me personally, I would rather just have an amp that sounds good at low volume. Now you're gonna get a terrible tone out of a JCM 800 at low volumes. You're gonna get a really terrible tone out of a 1959 SLP at low volumes and other similar amps like that. So an attenuator to play even at reasonable levels, even in a band setting half the time, an attenuator is gonna be necessary for amps like that. If I'm practicing at home, I mean, if you have the luxury of owning multiple amps like I do, I'm going to gravitate towards an amp that just sounds good at low volume anyways if I'm trying to play at low volume, and I just wouldn't even think of using something like one of my JCM 800s. The Friedman stuff also has an excellent master volume on them as well, so they sound good at low volumes. So just make sure that you're getting an amp based on your needs. If you're getting a JCM 800 and you're planning on playing it at bedroom volumes, you're probably going to be disappointed. Even with a good attenuator, you're not going to get the full experience, whereas playing something like the EVH 5153 Stealth is going to sound awesome at bedroom volumes. So keep that in mind. It all depends on your situation. Nick Harper asks, I know you love Peavey 5150s. Samesies, brother. And I was wondering if you have any experiences with the 6534 Plus model. Always wanted to try one, but unfortunately they seem a bit hard to come by. You're not wrong, man. They are not super easy to locate. I did own one for a short time a few years ago, and it was a great amp, but I really didn't notice that much of a difference between it and my 6505 Plus. At the time, I wasn't into collecting amps as much as I am now, and I think I had just bought my Les Paul Custom, so that was one of the amps that I just decided to move, only because it was worth more than my 6505 Plus. In hindsight, I wish I kind of would have kept the 6534 Plus because they are very hard to come by and the prices on them are usually pretty high. But overall, I would say the only thing I really noticed is it had maybe a slightly rounder midsection overall, and it was a little bit warmer sounding. But really, I mean, the power tubes, guys, they just don't make that big of a difference. Now, if the power section is completely redesigned, which I think it was redesigned to a point on the 6534 Plus in order to allow for those EL34 power tubes, I believe the transformer is different. That'll make more of a difference, but even so, I mean, it sounds like the same amp to me. There's really not a lot of differences. Nothing that you probably couldn't make up for with an EQ in the loop. So, cool amp, for sure. Collector's item at this point, kinda, yeah. But is it something that you need to run out and get because you're gonna maybe think that it's gonna be a more Marshall-y sounding version of a 6505 Plus? It's not gonna be the case. Steve W asks, if I mail you my wife, can you please profile her on your quad Cortex and add a very powerful noise gate? I'd also like to dial a little honkiness out of her upper mids. Thanks in advance. Yeah, man, for sure. With the Neural Quad Cortex, you can really shape what you're capturing. So if we plug into your wife and dial her up just the right way, it probably depends on her mood and the day of the week, and adjust the parameters in the Neural Quad Cortex as we're capturing her, we can definitely go in and make some adjustments and really get the sound out of her that you have always wanted. So the Neural Quad Cortex is a great piece of gear for that. eHawk42, what is up, dude? Asks, Hey Kyle, do you struggle with any tinnitus? I'm a drummer and guitarist myself, have worn earplugs 95% of the time whenever I play drums, rehearse, or go to shows. However, I still have tinnitus in my right ear that's been getting worse lately, which has really been bumming me out. I wouldn't be surprised if you also had it, considering you play drums and loud amps pretty often. Do I have tinnitus? Yeah, a little bit. Do I notice it like 95% of the time? No, I really don't. I was stupid when I was young, you know, just like most of us are, and decided that I don't need earplugs up until, honestly, probably like 3 years ago. I didn't wear earplugs at all for the most part. So unfortunately, I've probably permanently damaged my hearing, but I never really get the ringing in my ears. Even when it's really silent, there are times when I don't notice it at all. Other times I can kind of hear it a little bit if I focus on it. And then every now and then I'll just get a random ringing in my ears, but this is extremely few and far between. So I'm sure it's affected me to some point, although on a day-to-day basis, I don't really notice it. But now, I mean, moving forward, I have bought some more expensive earplugs that are really nice, and I just use those anytime I'm in a full band situation or a live situation, just to save myself any more permanent damage, because I love to play guitar loud. I'm a drummer. I have big cymbals, and I also hit the drums hard. So, I mean, it's naturally loud when I play drums. And anything I can do to protect my hearing long term at this point, I am all in for, because I do not want to lose my hearing. Music, guitar gear, all that stuff is literally my entire life. So if I go deaf or lose most of my hearing, it's gonna be pretty bleak for me. But anyways, hope that's not the case for you, man. I hope the damage isn't too extensive. And for all you guys out there, seriously, put earplugs in when you're playing loud, man. You'll save yourself in the end. I know it's not cool. I know it doesn't sound as good with earplugs in, but you're gonna save yourself long term. So seriously, just think about it. All right, last question for this week. Stout Coffee asks, you seem to be a Les Paul kind of guy. Correct. What do you think about Gibson's other models like the SG, the Flying V, Explorer, etc.? I love them. Even though I am a single cut / Les Paul kind of guy as my main guitar, I love Explorers, I love SGs, I love Vs. I had a bunch of all those models up until last year, when I sold a lot of my gear off because I wasn't really playing guitar that much. I kind of lost my passion for it. So yeah, I love all the Gibson models. I mean, truthfully, Gibson, yeah, they have their shortcomings, absolutely. They have their design flaws. But overall, for me as a player, I just resonate with those guitars the most. They're my favorites. I like boomer gear. I don't care. That's just what I gravitate towards. I currently have 2 Explorers. I have the white 91 Explorer that you guys have seen on the channel pretty extensively. And I also have a black 2007 Explorer that I played a few times as well. I love both of those. For Gibson SGs, I used to have like six SGs, something like that. I had a bunch. I love SGs, but I sold all of them except for one last year when I went through my big gear selling phase. And the only reason is just because I didn't really want to sell any of my Les Pauls. I'm like physically attached to my Les Pauls. I only sold the ones that I just didn't love, which I think were 2, or 3. I sold my first standard, I sold a traditional, and I sold a newer standard that was chambered that I didn't like all that much. But yeah, Les Pauls are really hard for me to part with. So the SGs, and I had a V, or I had 2 Vs, and I sold both my Vs. I had a Cherry Explorer that I sold, and I sold 5 of my 6 SGs. So the one that I have left right now is a keeper. It's a forever keeper for me. It's one of the Gibson SG Silverburst robots that the previous owner took all the robot stuff out of, so it just functions as a normal guitar now, which is awesome. And it's got the stock 490, 498 pickups in it that I love. And I had a couple SGs that I really, really liked and kind of kicked myself for selling. So I love SGs, I love Explorers. One of my guitars that I'm actually on the hunt for, I'm not really even looking for guitars right now, but if I come across this one at a good price, I will definitely snag it. That's a 91 matching white or cream Flying V that would match my Explorer, just because I love the way that white Flying Vs look. So I'm on the hunt for one of those as well. And another one would be a vintage RD, because my man Fluff loves RDs. He's actually the person who introduced me to them through his channel years ago when he got his first one. Ever since then, I've really, really wanted one. They either just didn't pop up at the right times, or they popped up in terrible condition, or now they are just extremely overpriced. So I would love to get a vintage RD. I would also love to get one of the vintage E2 Explorers that have the pancake body and the really cool finishes from the 80s. But again, that was a guitar that used to sell for $1,000, $1,200 back when I didn't have that kind of money. Now I can afford one at that price, but the prices on them have risen to like $2,000. So yeah, I'm a huge Gibson guitar fan overall. I know that they're not super popular in the metal community these days, but I don't really care. I love them. I always have. I always will. And I think that their classic shapes are just pretty much what have inspired everything else around them, other than like the Tele and Stratocaster thing. But I mean, pretty much every guitar that you see out there today was either inspired by a Gibson model or inspired by a Fender model. There are definitely brands and models that have improved upon the Gibson design. Gibson is kind of stuck in the past, but that's really because that's where their fan base wants them. So anytime they try to do something new and radical, even though a lot of their ideas are, you know, absolutely ridiculous, if they would just come down to earth and make a practical modern Les Paul, a practical modern Explorer with like maybe a different scale and a nice heel cut and the correct headstock angle, something like that, and market it towards newer players and keep their older line without adding in all the stupid bells and whistles with all the switching and everything else that they were always trying to do when Henry was the CEO. I think if they marketed it right, it would do well, and people might be able to stop complaining about Gibsons. But either way, yeah, that's it. I'm a fanboy. I am biased, but I am rooted in reality. I know they have their faults, and I completely understand that. And if you guys don't like them, that's fine. I understand that as well. They're not for everybody. So I'm a big fan of pretty much all of the classic Gibson shapes for sure. I own a few of them. I will own a couple more before this is all said and done. Anyways, that got really long-winded, so I am going to wrap this one up. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope to see you guys in New Jersey. Thank you so much for the questions. I really appreciate it. Please, for next week, leave your questions down below in the comments, and I will absolutely do my best to get to them. Please also check down in the description for the links to my Patreon. Please consider becoming a member of my Patreon community and helping the channel grow. And also the Discord server and all the other support links down there. Check those out. Would really love to see you guys around. Kyle here again. We'll see you guys next time.